So let's ask a question. What happens when one of the oldest, most foundational stories ever told gets an iPhone? Well, today, that's exactly what we're looking at, peeking at ancient scripture through a totally modern lens. Okay, let's dive right in. Imagine you're just scrolling through your feed and you see this post. You know the type. It's the kind of caption that's practically begging to start drama. And in this case, it kicks off one of the most epic stories of family jealousy and betrayal we've ever known. And yeah, you guessed it, this is the story of Joseph, but the version we're exploring remixes it as a digital genesis. It translates this ancient saga into the slang and, the vibe of today. It's a pretty cool way to see just how timeless these human dramas really are. And this comparison right here, it gets straight to the point. On the one hand, you have the formal, old-school scripture, and on the other, the remix. My brothers are low-key hating, which just nails the raw, relatable feeling behind it all. See, it's not just a robe. It's a status symbol. It's drip. And that jealousy, it is very real.
So let's see how this low-key hating spirals out of control. And fast. We're not talking about just unfollowing a sibling on social media here. The consequences get way, way more serious. Life-altering, actually.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows how quickly Joseph's life goes from being the favorite son to hitting absolute rock bottom. Fueled by that jealousy, his brothers don't just beat him up, they literally sell him into slavery. He gets dragged to Egypt, and to top it all off, he eventually gets thrown in prison on completely false charges. The source we're looking at humorously calls this a toxic family situation. You gotta love the understatement, right? Using today's therapy speak for something this catastrophic is darkly funny, but it also really highlights just how insane the brothers' actions were. And it keeps going. Framing his time in prison through the ironic lens of an internet trend, an aesthetic, is another way this modern remix tries to wrap its head around the kind of suffering Joseph went through. It's almost like a coping mechanism, finding a modern label for a totally unimaginable experience. But here's the thing. Joseph has a very specific skill, and it has nothing to do with fighting or politics. It's this unique talent that's about to change everything, not just for him, but for an entire nation. So Joseph's path out of prison isn't going to be some big escape plan. Nope, his key to freedom is actually hidden inside the bizarre, confusing dreams of the Pharaoh himself. This brings us to the scripture sync part of our source, where the ancient meaning is laid out crystal clear. The Pharaoh is being tormented by these two dreams, and nobody in his entire kingdom can figure them out. I mean, can you imagine? You're the ruler of the most powerful empire on earth, and you wake up from a nightmare like that? These perfect, healthy symbols of prosperity just being devoured by skinny, sickly ones. Yeah, you'd want some answers too. So Joseph gets called up from prison, and he doesn't beat around the bush. He tells Pharaoh the dream is a direct message from God. Those 7 healthy cows, they represent 7 years of incredible harvest for Egypt. But they're going to be followed by 7 years of a devastating famine. And just in case the message wasn't clear enough, a second dream comes right after it. This one uses symbols of agriculture, the very thing Egypt's wealth is built on, to hammer home the exact same point. Joseph explains that the repeat isn't a coincidence. Think of the second dream as a confirmation, like a divine read receipt. It's to show that this message is for real and the plan is locked in. The famine is definitely coming. And because of this incredible insight, Pharaoh doesn't just set Joseph free. He promotes him on the spot. He puts this former prisoner, this former slave, in charge of the entire country's food supply. His job? Prepare for the good years and survive the bad ones. It's an unbelievable comeback story, from the cell block to second in command. So, why does all this matter? I mean, what does framing this ancient story with Instagram captions and modern slang actually do for us? Well, here's where the story comes full circle in this amazing, ironic twist. The famine hits, just like Joseph said it would, and who comes to Egypt desperate for food? His brothers. They are brought before this powerful Egyptian official, and they have absolutely no idea that they're bowing down to the very same brother they sold into slavery all those years ago. So the big takeaway here is that changing the language doesn't make the story any less powerful. In fact, it kind of makes it feel more immediate, more real. Whether you call it an ornate robe or exclusive drip, the core human emotions, envy, betrayal, forgiveness, they're all the same. Using our own language to tell these stories just proves how deeply they still hit home.
And that kind of leaves us with a fun final thought. Think about your own life, your own challenges and wins. The words we use really shape our stories, don't they? And that shows that every generation is going to find its own new way to tell the oldest tales there are.